for today, which is from Chapter 8, Section 2. And the title is The Difference Between Imprisonment and Freedom. Julie, since you have Julie C., I'm going to ask you, is volunteered to be our reader today. Thank you, Julie, for your service to the group. And she has new technology on, and so this is her maiden voyage over the phone with her new technology. Whenever you're ready, Julie.
Thank you. There is a rationale for choice. Only one teacher knows what your reality is. If learning to remove the obstacles to that knowledge is the purpose of the curriculum, you must learn it of him. The ego does not know what it is trying to teach. It is trying to teach you what you are without knowing what you are. It is expert only in confusion. It does not understand anything else. As a teacher, then, the ego is totally confused and totally confusing. Even if you could disregard the Holy Spirit entirely, which is impossible, you could still learn nothing from the ego, because the ego knows nothing.
So what an unusual teacher to have is the ego, trying to teach you what you are without knowing what you are. And the inevitable result of that is a confusion about yourself, confusion about your being and your nature. And this is the central error in the ego's belief system, is with regard to substitute ideas for your true nature that it tries to impose. What is the solution to that? The solution to that is to have a teacher that knows what you are. And by teacher here, we're going to refer to the one teacher of the Holy Spirit who knows what your reality is. And so that's the obvious solution, is a teacher whose central understanding resides in truth and clarity. And then the goal of this curriculum is to remove all the obstacles in our minds that would teach us something else, teach us otherwise. So that's makes it very clear what is the purpose here. The purpose is to once again reconnect with our true self, since we have mistakenly followed the ego's guidance in the past. What we now need is better guidance, which is the guidance of the Holy Spirit, who knows what we are, and she can gently and lovingly help to remove all confusion in our mind about ourselves. And that is her teaching technique. That's what the undoing is. This is what forgiveness is, to gently remove from your mind all that which is untrue. Most people assume forgiveness is about what somebody else did and pardoning them for their poor behavior. But forgiveness in the Course of Miracles is about the content of our own consciousness and a willingness to let go of everything which was taught by the ego. That is forgiveness. It's the undoing of the lies of the ego, which we all know can really get a strong grip on us. So that's a big task, the undoing and letting go of all those errors. And the part that makes it so all pervasive is the error centers on what we are, our nature. And so that is easily corrected only by a teacher that knows what your reality is. And so that's why we look to the Holy Spirit for the guidance. Julie, you with us? Hang on just a second. Susie had a comment?
So I just have a question, Jonica, because it ties into today's lesson. So my forgiveness for myself and for someone else in this world that I might disagree with, right, has nothing to do with that disagreement or that, you know, difference in belief. It's all in this world. My forgiveness is just knowing that, or my salvation, my atonement, my forgiveness is just knowing that this person is an innocent child of God, just like me, and I have no judgment. Can you help me there?
Yeah.
Because, like, for instance, I listen to Marianne Williamson, you know, every morning, and she breaks down the lesson, and she was speaking about the lesson asks to choose someone. And she told a story how, you know, George Bush, because when she was running and she listened to him, and although she disagreed with some of his, you know, beliefs, she saw him as, you know, an innocent child of God, and, you know, had not such a strong reaction, and saw it from a place of love, where all her friends were getting, oh, did you hear him? Did you hear him? And she was just, she saw him as an innocent, equal child of God. So can you speak to that? Is that
on? Right on?
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I can have a different belief, but in a loving way.
Yeah. And this is really elaborated on in great detail in the supplement to the Course of Miracles called Prayer, Forgiveness, and Healing, where they differentiate between the world's understanding of forgiveness versus the forgiveness that the Holy Spirit teaches. So this is handled in detail in other places, but the phenomena of, remember, the Course in Miracles is to teach ourselves about what we are. It's not about commentary on everybody else. The ego would have us believe that we are here to judge one another. All right. The Holy Spirit would say, well, that is just another obstacle in our mind, the belief that we're here to function as judges of one another. And those obstacles have to be removed from our mind in order for us to fully understand our own true nature. And when we do that, it will bring peace. So everything is subordinated or given lesser value so that we might remove obstacles to our own awareness of peace. And then from that new perspective of being peaceful within, we then approach life situations through an entirely different perspective. So it's a shift in perception regarding situations that occur in life, but now we're no longer approaching it as if we are here to judge them, but now we're approaching it from a point of view of innocence, of peace, and of healing and helping others to heal. So even an unfortunate situation can be, for a miracle worker, an opportunity to bring healing both to yourself and to the other party.
Yeah, great. Thank you. It's kind of the message of today's lesson.
It is.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan.
You're welcome. Will?
Yeah, so let's talk about this ego thing for a minute. First of all, I take some exception here because the ego not only separates us from our higher power or God, it also separates us from everyone else. And so I would posit to say that when you're living in the ego, it lacks your ability to have learning because you're constantly feeling in a defensive place, because that's what the ego really is. And that defensiveness separates us not only from our higher power, but from those who live around us. And it really limits the amount we can learn about ourselves because we're so preoccupied with defending who we already are. We don't have the capacity to learn from our brothers and sisters who we really are.
Everything you said, I think is right on, Will. It's very true. Ego puts up defenses that act as obstacles to the truth. And so it impairs us in a way that we didn't know, that we were unconscious of. Thank you, brother. Let's go on.
Is there any possible reason for choosing a teacher such as this? Does the total disregard of anything it teaches make anything but sense? Is this the teacher to whom a son of God should turn to find himself? The ego has never given you a sensible answer to anything. Simply on the grounds of your own experience with its teaching, should not this alone disqualify it as your future teacher? Yet the ego has done more harm to your learning than this alone. Learning is joyful if it leads you along your natural path and facilitates the development of what you have. When you are taught against your nature, however, you will lose by your learning because your learning will imprison you. Your will is in your nature and therefore cannot go against it.
So we talk a lot, the Course uses the metaphor of being imprisoned. And it doesn't mean in the physical sense, it means that your understanding, your awareness of life and love are imprisoned inside a false belief system that the ego supports, the ego offers. It's one that a belief system that is against your nature, and that belief system imprisons your mind, your awareness, thus blocking you from experiencing love and peace and forgiveness and the things that Will mentioned a moment ago. It inhibits you from real experiences with life. So the essential thesis in the Course is that your will is the only thing that can trigger's the wrong word, the only thing that can motivate you out of your existing ego beliefs and into the light and the understanding of the Holy Spirit. your will becomes critical. It's your willingness. And this is demonstrated in your willingness to practice the workbook lessons on a regular basis. It's your willingness to withdraw attention to the ego's guidance and transfer your attention to the Holy Spirit's guidance. Your will is in your nature, and therefore your will can only lead you in favor of your nature. Now, this can become complicated because people assume that all will is free will. This is not what the Course, this needs clarification. As long as your mind is preoccupied with ego teachings, your will is not free. It's imprisoned. And so this is why it has led so many people to be imprisoned by it for so long, is it requires both a change in your understanding and an assertion of your will that I want to be free once again. So the title, the section today is the difference between imprisonment and freedom. We have to be willing to recognize that our thoughts, when they're located inside a framework of the ego, we're imprisoned there, and recognize the difference between that and when our mind is free and alive and illuminated by the Holy Spirit. Sandra?
Yeah, the ego denies my free will so that learning isn't joyful anymore. Learning becomes like it's hard. It's a struggle. It becomes more of a struggle because my free will gives me my freedom, gives me the power of decision to choose. But if I choose the ego, which is so subtle, it's so insidious, it just pops in there. I know what I'm choosing by the way I feel. The Holy Spirit's curriculum is a happy learner, and it's unaffected by the ego. So, and I haven't been too happy lately, so I know that my ego's been in charge. I'm complete.
Yeah, that's one of the best indications where somewhere along in your program with Course in Miracles, maybe it's with the lessons, maybe it's in this class, maybe it's with an encounter with somebody, all of a sudden you realize how happy you are to be in a process of learning to forgive, how good it feels to let go of the role of judgment of others and instead shift to an awareness of their innocence and acceptance. It's a happy lesson. It feels good. Susie?
Yeah, that's just so true. I mean, to read this again is so, I mean, my learning was never joyful, ever. I mean, this sentence to me is like, wow. I remember, a year ago or 2 years ago in the Course saying, really? Oh, I'm supposed to be joyful? And I believed, because what is true for me, it was true for me, that my nature was not to be joyful.
Yes.
And so I was imprisoned. My learning imprisoned me. And now I know this was upside down. And I have been in the process of, unlearning what I've learned. And I'm so happy to be joyful. and to understand what that means, and to truly understand that I was operating from my ego's will, or, I was imprisoned by my ego. And I'm not an unhappy, negative, miserable person, imprisoned. Not that I was miserable, but my mind was. My ego is. And that's Susie, that's just that small self. And I'm joyful to know that it was all just one big story. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
The other thing is that I always was resisting conflict because it was like, who wants conflict? And that's what was making me miserable, was because I was resisting conflict rather than embracing it and knowing that it's an opportunity to happily learn something new. It's just, it's again, I love this refining purification process. It's wonderful.
Indeed. Indeed. All right, we'll go on.
That was a cat thing. I apologize.
That's all right. We forgive the cat.
Thank you. The ego cannot teach you anything as long as your will is free, because you will not listen to it. It is not your will to be imprisoned, because your will is free. That is why the ego is the denial of free will. It is never God who coerces you, because he shares his will with you. His voice teaches only in accordance with his will. But that is not the Holy Spirit's lesson, because that is what you are. The lesson is that your will and God's cannot be out of accord, because they are one. This is the undoing of everything the ego tries to teach. It is not, then, only the direction of the curriculum that must be unconflicted, but also the content.
So this is a major distinction here, and the Course really makes it well. It says that your will is really a gift from God, so it can't be compromised. It can't be poorly. It is always in the right. Your free will is part of your nature. It's always in the right. And therefore, your will and God's will cannot be out of accord. What was not understood is that you can be imprisoned and not exercising your free will. And that you can, why? Because the ego is the denial of free will. The ego would have you believe that you are stuck in its delusional system and that there's no way out. You don't have, it wants you to believe you don't have the power to choose, that you have no choice. It's the denial of your free will. And this is really a vital point within the program of Course in Miracles, is it requires that you shift from a belief that denies your free will to your exercising your will once again in a way that will free you. In fact, that's the only way you can become free, is to exercise your willingness to choose to change your mind and choose to be guided by the Holy Spirit. The Course would say there's no other way to become free. In the absence of your willingness to be free, there's no way you can become free. You must exercise your will. Therefore, So this last line is a subtle reference, not so subtle reference to the previous section, which is on the direction of the curriculum. So not only must you recognize that your direction is to leave the prison of the ego, but you also must realize that the content, this is a little play on words perhaps, the content of your leaving the prison of the ego is that my will and God's will are one. And that we're working together as partners in this. That it's not, I am not a ego. I am a child of God. My will is in alignment and in accord with God's. So we say the content of this curriculum is that we are already in our true being, in our true nature. Our will is already one with God's. We just need to leave the thought system that taught us otherwise. So your will can, your true will can never be out of accord with God's because they are one. However, the ego would teach you a different message about your will. It would teach you, in fact, that you don't have a free will, that you are a victim of the chaos of this world, that you have no power to choose, and that you really can't make any change because the world is too all-encompassing for you. We need to, and so it requires of the miracle worker that we stand against the lie, that we stand in we have firm boundary. I will not buy into the lie. I will invest my faith and trust in the truth. Susie?
I remember when we talked about this, whenever it was last year, whenever it was very helpful because I realized that my real will, like you said, is with God. And, you know, we talk about free will, and it was always confusing when we got to this. But I realized that if my will, which is free, I get it, was siding with the ego, then I wasn't in accordance with God's will. And it really helped, you know, it was so confusing in the beginning, you know, of the explanation and the distinction, but it's really helpful for me now because I can feel, and I know now what that is, you know, and I'm not arguing, oh, I have free will, you know, like I understand I'm out of accord with God's will. And the way my will is free is to get back into accordance with what's really my inheritance, to be with God's will. So this was an important one for me.
Yeah, see, that's the value of clarity. It feels, everything seems to fit. It feels right. I can understand and appreciate this. Sandra?
Yeah, the ego wants to imprison me so that when one door closes, I become a victim, rather than when one door closes, there's 5,000 other doors that I can pick. I'm complete.
So one of the reasons why this becomes confusing is contained in the next paragraph. Not only does the ego teach you the denial of your will, it goes further. Julie?
The ego tries to teach that you want to oppose God's will. This unnatural lesson cannot be learned. and the attempt to learn it is a violation of your own freedom, making you afraid of your will because it is free. The Holy Spirit opposes any imprisoning of the will of a Son of God, knowing that the will of the Son is the Father's. The Holy Spirit leads you steadily along the path of freedom, teaching you how to disregard or look beyond everything that would hold you back.
Okay, so now we are exposing the ego's agenda here. First, that it would try to convince you you have no free will. Second, that it's trying to teach you to oppose God's will, to be a part of an opposition camp to God's will. It's an unnatural lesson that there's no understanding that can be brought from that because it's unnatural. It's a violation of your freedom, your free will, and it will, if you believe what the ego is saying, it'll make you afraid of your will. It'll put, it's a strange arrangement to have a beautiful eternal nature, but have a set of thoughts which are in opposition to that. And therefore afraid that this opposition is opposed to you. Now you've got your own nature opposed to you. This is a form of insanity, to be so split about yourself and everybody else and life itself that you would feel in opposition to it. And therefore, in order to heal, the Holy Spirit opposes any effort to imprison your will. And by the way, we haven't talked about many of the forms by which your will can be imprisoned, but you can imagine everything that would not be in your favor in life that would lead you into unhappiness is a form of are forms that imprisonment can take. So the Holy Spirit would impose any effort to imprison your will, and it would, because the Holy Spirit wants to help you recognize freedom, and it would instead lead you steadily along the path of freedom. And here's the part that we all need to learn. The Holy Spirit would teach you how to disregard or look beyond everything that would hold you back. So pause on that. The words are easy to say. How to disregard or look beyond everything that would hold you back. This is what forgiveness is. It's experiences in life arise, and there are some that would hold you back, that would keep you imprisoned, keep you believing that your judgment of where the guilt lies is the justified. And the Holy Spirit would teach you to disregard or look beyond all those things that would hold you back. It has to be learned. And I have an example that I'll share, perhaps, but Julie had a comment.
Yeah, you just kind of, at the end, you kind of said what I was thinking, because for me, the Holy Spirit opposes any imprisoning of our will. Unforgiveness is the biggest imprisonment. And, that's the biggest block and the biggest imprisonment. So to me, that line where it says, the Holy Spirit teaches you how to disregard or look beyond anything that would hold you back. Unforgiveness is what is holding me back. And so I want to be on that path of freedom. And that is why I try to learn that. I learn to disregard. I learn to try to look beyond those things that I am holding that are, we talked about judgments and, all that sort of thing, but it's basically, forgiveness is the freedom, and the forgiveness is for me. So I'm looking inside at those blocks, and I am getting rid of them, and I'm forgiving so that I can be free. And, a lot of times the other person doesn't even know. I love Susie's example of the debate stage and, forgiving your opponent or something like that. And the real reason that we do that is so that we can be free. And they do their own stuff, but I have to do it so that I can be free.
Indeed.
That's it.
Indeed. And so remember, these things that hold us back can take many forms, and the Holy Spirit is not going to sit in judgment of the particular thing that holds you back. She's not here to judge, but her role is to teach you how to look beyond everything that would hold you back. And that happens often by gently bringing it to your attention and saying, that's obviously causing you a little pain and despair and lack of peace. Do you want to hold on to that, or do you want to turn that over to me to help you heal? And that's where willingness comes in. Do you want to turn this thing holding you back over to the Holy Spirit? Are you willing? Or do you want to hang on to it a while more and continue to be held back by it? It's a very gentle process. And the truth is that we all do this in accordance with when we are ready, and not before that. Sandra?
Yeah, I had an aha this morning, because I have noticed in a lot of these groups, which I'm not going to too many anymore, just this one, that there's a lot of trauma survivors, and and I also connect that with that we're creating a whole new earth, a new heaven, and so I feel like what an honor. Because if trauma survivors can forgive and truly forgive, then there's no excuse for anybody not to be able to forgive. If we can do it in favor of letting go so that we can create a new world, then nobody has an excuse for not forgiving. I'm complete. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's just
What I heard there is that there's no order of difficulty in miracles, whether it be a trauma survivor and we'll go on down the list of that. To the Holy Spirit, that is not more difficult to teach you to disregard than another person who's wrapped up in something else, all blocked by something else. So that's the beauty of a teacher that's working with the laws of heaven, where there is no order of difficulties in healing according to the laws of heaven. Julie C?
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking as I was listening to Julie that it has been my experience that forgiveness is the opposite of fear. Like we talk a lot about how, love is the opposite of fear. But I think for me, I'm someone who, has lived through a lot of interesting things and have had different stories around what those things mean and what is my place in those stories. How I get rid of fear is to embody forgiveness. So that just kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like your freeing agent. Forgiveness is the agent that frees us from what would otherwise hold us back. Okay, we'll go on.
We have said that the Holy Spirit teaches you the difference between pain and joy. That is the same as saying he teaches you the difference between imprisonment and freedom. You cannot make this distinction without him, because you have taught yourself that imprisonment is freedom. Believing them to be the same, how can you tell them apart? Can you ask the part of your mind that taught you to believe they are the same to teach you how they are different?
So this is the major role of Holy Spirit, is to teach us to distinguish between opposites that were blurred by the ego. For example, love and fear. The ego would teach you to be in love with fear and to be fearful of love. Well, that's confused. And so that's the part of our mind that was taught this confusion. The Holy Spirit is here to help us just make a proper distinction between love and fear, between joy and pain, between innocence and guilt. It's very humbling to recognize that you and I by ourselves cannot make this distinction without the Holy Spirit. It's very humbling. And it was a few weeks ago, Heidi asked, can we ever get to the point where we don't need the Holy Spirit's guidance anymore? You know, can you work along this program to the point where you got it? I don't need to reference the Holy Spirits anymore. No, because in the answer is no, because as you learn to make these distinctions and choose love over fear, your mind is like more increasingly coming to accept that you are the Holy Spirit. Your higher mind is the mind of the Holy Spirit. And so you can't get to the point where you do without your Holy Spirit, because that would be doing without your higher mind. You're back to imprisonment again. So the Holy Spirit is the light of truth. You can't make distinctions without the light of truth. Therefore, that's her chief role, is to illuminate matters of life that previously were very blurred and distorted by an ego that was teaching not only that you don't have free will, but was also teaching you that you want to be against the will of God. We need to be retaught and illuminated. And so these distinctions, their purpose here isn't to go down a long list of distinctions in the Course of Miracles. Trust me, there's a long list of distinctions that the Holy Spirit would teach us in the Course of Miracles. And the one that we just referred to is the difference between your lower mind, occupied by ego thoughts, and your higher mind, which is guided by the Holy Spirit. These are distinctions, and it's not an intellectual learning. You haven't really learned it just because you can now say the words. It's a learning that is a firsthand experience of yours, so that you now know how to do that. It's like really learning how to drive a car, you no longer need to think about it when you get in your car and drive away. Whereas when you were first in your initial months, you had to think about a lot of things because you hadn't learned it yet. So you need to learn it so that it becomes beyond the level of trying to think what's going on. It's a knowing from firsthand experience. Noel?
This has been very helpful. I thought while you were speaking that for me, the mistake is to think of the Holy Spirit as a separate entity, especially using a pronoun to refer to the Holy Spirit. But as you said, it's really an aspect of our higher mind.
Yes.
And when we align with that, it's a natural outflow, it seems to me. The other thing I wanted to say is that in terms of distinguishing between joy and pain, between ego and higher mind, for me, the stumbling block is always self-forgiveness, which pulls me back to the ego, really. But that's a constant lesson for me.
Very good. You know, as she was sharing that, I want to just go back a moment to the previous paragraphs where, remember, the Holy Spirit now we've learned is helping us to distinguish. Well, we're learning to disregard the things that hold us back. That requires that we distinguish what are the things that are holding us back. And then second step is choose to not keep obsessing and clinging on to what's holding us back, but to make a willful choice to free ourselves and disregard it. So the distinguishing and the disregarding go hand in glove. You can't disregard if you don't make a distinction, a proper distinction. You must first distinguish and then disregard. Sandra?
Yeah, this is so exciting because I've actually thought of this planet Earth as being Holy Spirit school. And because there's so much information coming out about extraterrestrials and interstellar travel and all of this and the I forget what they call that. That's not important. But anyway, if that is, if in fact it's possible for us to move from this planet into other dimensions, onto other planets, then if we don't master this Holy Spirit school, we'll just make a mess of those places too. So if we master this here, we'll be able to move about freely in the whole universe because the universe is a friendly place, not an unfriendly place. It's planet Earth that needs the transmutation and we're sort of in transition. And my hope is that we'll all master Holy Spirit school and be able to be so expansive that we can go anywhere and do anything because we won't be making messes. Does that make sense?
I really like the idea of characterizing it as Holy Spirit school. That's really beautiful. Yes, that is full of hope and light. And that is our function. The Holy Spirit says our function here is to learn, is both to heal ourselves and to learn to help heal others. That's what Holy Spirit school is all about. Very much with what you were saying, our purpose. Susie?
Well, to follow that Holy Spirit school, I love that it says categorically, you cannot make this distinction without the Holy Spirit. And that is what the lessons are all for. So, it just reminds me of school, like what Sandra just said, like I am learning that I have to undo my thought system, disregard what it says, make the distinction. And it's done all through the lessons and the repetition over and over and over again. And I cannot do this alone. And it just brings up every lesson for me, but fear is the stranger here, just keeps ringing in my mind and ringing in my mind. And I cannot get to truly understand that without the help of my teacher, if I'm in school, which is the Holy Spirit. And it's just really, really powerful. But to know that I have help, a real teacher and a companion on this journey that will help me, makes all the difference in the world, and has helped me distinguish, has helped me disregard my ego with the help of the Holy Spirit, period. End of story, black and white, pain and joy, just like it says in the Course. I have no choice but to join with the Holy Spirit if I want to heal.
Beautiful. Well, I'm going to share a little personal story since Sandra shared about the Holy Spirit School. So from an early age, I became a believer was taught and became a believer in what I now label as the evil world theory. The world is a dark and evil place. And variations on it that aren't important to go into. I had to learn to distinguish that teaching system from what the curriculum of the Atonement or the Holy Spirit School, which is a very different view of the world. So I had to learn to distinguish that I bought into a belief system that was full of evil and darkness, and that there was an alternative that I could choose. And the hard part was disregarding the theory that I believed throughout my teens and 20s and 30s, to learn to disregard that which was holding me back. And so these distinctions and then the willingness to disregard the old thought system, they take many forms. And there's no doubt that they have taken form for each of us in our own way. They become assumptions regarding the nature of reality itself, because that's what this is. It's an existential confusion. It's assumptions about the nature of reality itself. We need to learn to distinguish that between that, what we were taught, and what the Holy Spirit is offering, and then be willing to disregard the thoughts and ideas for which we had invested years of our belief into. And that's what leads to freedom, is once you exercise your willingness to disregard, you then draw to yourself all the aid that the Holy Spirit would offer you. You have a lot, when you choose to disregard what is holding you back, you are choosing to align with the Holy Spirit. And so you're not alone in that process. You are joining with the Holy Spirit in her teaching curriculum, which is to help you to heal and help you to help others heal. All right, so let's, hopefully the next paragraph will reinforce that.
The Holy Spirit's teaching takes only one direction and has only one goal. His direction is freedom, and his goal is God. Yet he cannot conceive of God without you, because it is not God's will to be without you. When you have learned that your will is God's, you could no more will to be without him than he could will to be without you. This is freedom, and this is joy. Deny yourself this, and you are denying God his kingdom, because he created you for this.
So I wanted to try to relate this to how each of us in our own experiences experiences this paragraph. And here's what came to me. When we deny ourselves this, which is the denial of our joy and of our freedom to heal and be whole, I suspect that everyone here has, at one point or another, denied their own joy and denied their own freedom and thought that, believed what the ego teaches, that we are on our own by ourselves, and that in that mode, it inevitably leads to following the ego as your guide. So, very different agendas here. The Holy Spirit's, so in order to make this distinction between what ego is teaching and what Holy Spirit is teaching, it must be very clear that we recognize what the Holy Spirit is offering. One direction, one goal. The direction is freedom. The goal is return you to your awareness of relationship to everything. In an existential way, this is really about your relationship to reality, to everything. It seems to take our form in terms of the people that we know and the things that we've done with our life, but that's only this chapter of existence. It really is more than this chapter on earth. When I say chapter, I mean our life in the body here on earth. This is really about a bigger picture that goes on beyond this chapter that we're in at the moment and has to do with our relationship to everything. You could no more be without God's will than the creator could be without his creation. And knowing this brings both freedom and joy. Joy?
When I said all power and glory are yours because the kingdom is his, this is what I meant. The will of God is without limit, and all power and glory lie within it. It is boundless in strength and in love and in peace. It has no boundaries because its extension is unlimited, and it encompasses all things because it created all things. By creating all things, it made them part of itself. You are the will of God because that is how you were created. Because your creator creates only like himself, you are like him. You are part of him who is all power and glory, and are therefore as unlimited as he is.
We said a moment ago, it has to do with your relationship with everything. Yes, because the creator, the source, has created all things and they're all a part of itself, and you are a part of the creator. So the ego, which is in opposition of this, would have you be very uncomfortable when confronted with this knowledge that we just read. and would foster feelings of awkwardness and discomfort for the purposes of ultimately closing your mind to such notions. And so I'll point out one of them that specifically comes up here, which it has to do with power and glory. And this should be rather obvious. The Creator has attributes which he has imparted to you and I, which are not widely manifest while we're in our learning stage here. They're not, I'm not saying these things are obvious, but they are a part of our nature. So it's the power of your mind to choose to be freedom, choose to be free and to change your mind. And it's the glory, which is a term implying light and illumination, spiritual luminosity, understanding, to be illuminated with the light of the Holy Spirit. Those terms wind up being banished by the ego. Even entertaining your self-concept in terms of power and glory, the ego wants you to reject those ideas so that it can replace them with their opposites. And so these are the distinctions that we need to learn, is between weakness and strength, between helplessness and power, between darkness and light, darkness and glory. Know that we share the attributes of our source. The Creator is our source. We share those attributes, not the attributes that ego, the world of the ego teaches. That's the initial distinction. And the path of freedom is the acceptance of these attributes as true of you. It's learning to disregard all the things that would hold you back so that you can openly accept those things which help you identify with your unlimited, unbounded true nature. Sandra?
Yeah, what I'm understanding is the major attribute of love is it's expansive, limitless expansion.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, when one door closes, there's 5,000 others. I don't have to be a victim when one door closes. And the extension is limitless. And the voice for God is creation and expansion. And therefore there's no opposites because God uses everything. It just keeps expanding to encompass whatever, to encompass. That's it. It expands to encompass everything. I'm complete.
Very much. Thank you, Sandra, for that testimony. Noelle?
My lesson today complements this very much. It's 104. I seek but what belongs to me in truth,
Mm-hmm.
and joy and peace are my inheritance. So that second part, joy and peace are my inheritance. Therefore, relax.
And enjoy.
Right.
I think Susie echoed this, but years ago in working with A Course in Miracles, I made it my quest, self-appointed quest, to understand and experience joy. I felt like this was the measure of consistency with A Course in of learning A Course in Miracles, because it talks about it all the time. I mean, it's not like I'm making this up. Is to understand and experience joy. I can tell you that it's a gradual process, making progress. Seems like happiness being a happy learner is probably an intermediate stage of that. So it's still a work in progress. But progress is being made. And so I would suggest first learning to be a happy learner, learning to make these distinctions, and then learning to disregard the ones that hold us back is part of being a happy learner. And all of that, I trust, is in the service ultimately of bringing about total joy. Julie, I'm sorry, Sandra, did you have one more comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, the lesson, God's plan is perfect happiness. God's plan for me is perfect happiness. And I figure it's my job. It's my job. I'm supposed to be happy. And so when I'm not, it's like, okay, there it is. Now, instead of resisting when I'm not happy, just go in and make another choice. That's it. Or feel it, let it pass through quickly, and then make another choice, because there's 5,000 other choices. I'm
Indeed.
complete.
Indeed. Very practical.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is our last paragraph today.
To what else except all power and glory can the Holy Spirit appeal to restore God's kingdom? His appeal then is merely to what the kingdom is, and for its own acknowledgement of what it is. When you acknowledge this, you bring the acknowledgement automatically to everyone, because you have acknowledged everyone. By your recognition, you awaken theirs, and through theirs, yours is extended. Awakening runs easily and gladly through the kingdom in answer to the call for God. This is the natural response of every son of God to the voice for his creator, because it is the voice for his creations and for his own extension.
Yeah, so this is a paragraph that might be difficult to understand. It's part of the Holy Spirit school, which we are in now, and which extends to the unlimited, extends forever, to total love for everything. And with that extension comes this attribute of power and joy that we met, power and glory that we mentioned a moment ago. And so the Holy Spirit would appeal to us to recognize this power and glory as part of the big picture, and to acknowledge that heaven is perfect and that all the attributes that are there are for your own good, and to acknowledge that, and that could only be what you really want. There's nothing that the ego could offer that could substitute and ever bring you happiness. And so that then sets into motion a cascade of decisions. when you acknowledge this, you bring the acknowledgement to everyone else. You become an expression of the extension of this forgiveness and healing and power and glory. You extend it through your presence, brings in, so it's a cascade. You acknowledge this, you bring the acknowledgement of to everyone else, because the recognition and acknowledgement of the kingdom is the acknowledgement of everyone. And by your recognizing this and helping them to experience it through and in your life, their recognition is also, they heal as well. None of us heals alone. When you heal, your healing helps others. It invites them to heal as well. And therefore, awakening runs easily and gladly through the kingdom in answer to the call. It's a natural response to get out of imprisonment and into freedom, to learn to distinguish pain from joy and choose joy is a natural response. So you're calling the deep in the depths of their being, not their superficial distractions of their mind, but you're calling to the depths of their nature. And therefore, that has a power to it that we do not fully understand. When you call into the depths of another's nature, it has a power to it that is not generally recognized, because you're dealing with their true spiritual nature. You're calling them to their true self. And so when we heal, we do not heal alone. We invoke the attributes of the one teacher, of the Holy Spirit, who unites us all together. It truly is a call to our own glory. And so it begins with where we started from here, which is the recognition that you have free will, that you cannot make distinctions by yourself, but that the Holy Spirit will help you make adequate distinctions between love and fear, joy and despair, et cetera, will help you make those distinctions. And then I want to go back to this key line in paragraph 4. And then when you've learned to make those distinctions, the Holy Spirit leads you steadily along the path of freedom, teaching you how to let go of your garbage, your baggage, to disregard or look beyond everything that would hold you back. It's a choice. It is definitely a choice. It would be easy to hold on to what would hold us back. But when we see the difference between pain and joy, between imprisonment and freedom, now we can make a healthy choice. Now we can make a choice that's in not only in our own best interest, but in the best interest of everyone involved. Noelle?
My toleration of joy is very minimal at this point.
Mhm.
And as you said, it's little by little by little. I keep feeling pulled back into the ego's fears and trepidations. And now with your elucidation, I recognize it's much more of a conscious choice And as you say, to disregard all of that, to jettison overboard all the baggage, whatever the particular manifestation is at a certain moment, and to really, I can feel it like almost like a rubber band or something that's stretching my toleration of joy and the feeling that I'm worthy, that I deserve it. To me, that's a large part of it on a more sustained basis.
Thank you, Noelle, for acknowledging that I find it true of myself as well. So Noelle was talking about, she has very little tolerance for joy. There's a tendency for myself, when a moment of supreme satisfaction, maybe it's a healing in relationship, that it's like, yes, this is what I wanted so much. I wind up spending a moment with that, but it's a short moment. And then quickly other substitutions come in, rush in. The Course talks about it, time and space will come in and collapse around you, and it's back to same old, same old. And so I'm learning to savor those moments and really nurture them in my being. And I would encourage you to do as well, when those things that gratitude, appreciation, understanding, insights, healing, forgiveness, savor those moments. Learn to tolerate what the ego finds intolerable.
And stretch the savoring.
Stretch it out. Yes, indeed. Felicia?
Hi, yes, I'm really glad that you went back to that paragraph 4, the last sentence in there, because I've really enjoyed the class today, and that's what I've really taken away from today's class, is that sentence. Because I was far from that when I began the course, and I can see how the more and the more that I stay connected with the Holy Spirit, that I stay in that place longer and more frequently. And I find that it has "or" in there, disregard or look beyond. And I find myself in situations where I'm struggling to disregard, that I can't overlook if I make that connection with the Holy Spirit, and that's what the Course is, to me, is teaching me, is to stay connected to Holy Spirit every second of every moment of every day, and always ask for guidance. And I mean, when I find myself in situations where I want to say something or want to make a judgment now, which I never could do in the past, I stop. It's like the Holy Spirit just brings a calmness over me, to where it's like, does this need to be said? Let's think about this for a minute, and then I say, okay, well, if it does need to be said, then you will put me in the position to say it. If it doesn't, then I won't be put in that position. And I find that that's working so well for me, and I do. I mean, I can't say that I'm always there, because I have, as y'all all know, I shared not that long ago what a horrible place I was in. But I allowed myself to go back into body me, and the ego, he ran with it. But I've reconnected, which I never disconnected, but I don't know how to say it. I came back in my mind and my spirit, and you know, the Holy Spirit's always there for me. All I have to do is ask. And, you know, I find joy there. If I feel like I'm not in joy, then I know that I have took myself out of it. You know, I'm allowing the ego to get a little nudge, you know. Yeah. I think I might have said this once before, but a lady said one time, said, if you're feeling far away from God, who moved? Because it wasn't God. So that's it. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Felicia. Thank you. Susie?
Oh, I could really identify with what Noelle said. And I used to have a very low tolerance for joy. But I have to say, after so much work, many times, or not many, a few times through the workbook, I have a very low tolerance for unhappiness and pain, which is remarkable because I never would have ever believed or thought I could be saying this. And I do. I have a very low tolerance now for unhappiness. And it's easily recognizable to me what Felicia just said, that I have pulled away from God or the Holy Spirit. But that's just what this work has done. Brought me, you know, helped me to disregard all that pain and have a higher tolerance for joy, which I never knew what it was. So yeah, I'm in school. I keep doing my lessons.
Great. Well, that's another day in Holy Spirit School. Actually, that's the beginning of our day. There's still more to come because there's plenty of opportunities to practice these things. Matter of fact, we would be led to believe that that's what we're here for, is to now, having heard of how the Holy Spirit wants to guide us out, to let our own lives become practical application for these principles. So, and we've heard it testified again and again today how those things work. So what a thrilling journey from imprisonment to freedom that we have already embarked upon. Joy awaits us. Power and glory is ours for the asking. That's all we're going to read today, friends. All right, let's dance. Look forward to, thank you for what you bring to these meetings. Thank you. I felt like I came into today's class with nothing particular I felt like my basket was empty, or I didn't, and now I feel like it's full. So thank you all. I honor the divine within you. Namaste.
Thank you too. Thank you, everyone.
Everybody, love you all.
Bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
A joyful day,
Yeah.
as much as we can stand.
Hi, Jonica, can you hang just 1 second?
I can.